Now, as crude prices have risen from a low of $45 a barrel last year, tanker earnings have dropped back to about $18,000 on average. Now, let's get more on all of this on the tanker industry. And let's talk to Ellen Wald. She's an energy expert and a non-resident scholar at the Arabia Foundation and author of the upcoming book, Saudi Inc. And she joins us from Jacksonville in Florida. Welcome to Money Talks, as always, Ellen. Now, look, last year, part of the oil glut story was that this excess supply was being stored on tankers offshore. As the oil markets rebalance between the supply and demand picture, has that excess supply been drawn off? Are there now no longer tankers holding crude offshore?
Well, what we were seeing in previous years was a situation that industry people call contango, which basically means that it is financially expedient for companies to basically store this oil in tankers and wait basically until they can get maybe a higher price later to sell it. But now we've moved into something called backwardation, where it's no longer financially good for these companies to store the oil in tankers, so less oil is being stored on tankers. And that in turn has freed up more tankers. And when you combine that with the fact that a lot of these shipping companies were actually increasing their fleets, so now we have even more tankers available to transport crude oil, but not necessarily an increase in the amount of crude oil that needs to be transported.
So how do shipping companies that operate these tankers respond? Do they just get shelved? Do they sack a lot of staff? Have there been a lot of job losses in this industry?
It's not clear whether there have been a lot of job losses yet. We've definitely seen share prices going down for these companies. They're not making as much in revenue, but there is one aspect that could, become kind of a bright a way that they could turn to transporting products. We know that some of the OPEC countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, have increased their export of products, so the kinds of things used to make gasoline or petrochemicals. So there could be growing business there, although I don't think we're quite seeing that at the level it needs to be yet. You
mentioned Saudi Arabia, but are there any other places that in particular have a big exposure to the tanker industry whose earnings might be affected more than others?
Well, one of the interesting things is that even though crude oil production from OPEC countries has gone down, particularly in Middle Eastern exports to Asia, we are seeing growth in American exports in crude oil. In fact, recently, I'm not sure exactly which month, but recently, the U.S. exported about 2 million barrels of crude oil per day, which is a new high. So I think that while certain areas are decreasing, that we may see increases in other areas.
Ellen Wald in Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you very much indeed.